too for everybody. So we'll have this recorded.
Sure.
Forward. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are ketteQ. Kette means chain in German, and the Q stands for quarterback. So we're the supply chain quarterback. A little bit of background on us. While we started about 5 years ago, our roots actually go back to 1994. And Scott and Bob, you may be familiar with a company called Barkawi Management Solutions. We were actually incubated by the Barkawi group of supply chain companies. And Barkawi Management Consultants, if you're not familiar with them, they're a supply chain consultancy, have grown very rapidly over the last couple of decades. And then they were recently purchased by a company called Genpact, which is a global managed services company. And they are the supply chain arm, consulting arm of Genpact. So we have our roots go very deep in supply chain and manufacturing. Our co-founder, Kareem Barkawi, started several companies in and around supply chain. And then another of our co-founders started a company called Servigistics, which is now owned by PTC. Some of you may be familiar with that as well if you've been in the manufacturing world for a while. And then we have a lot of practitioners, just expert supply chain practitioners that have put their expertise into developing and filling the gaps within a lot of the legacy solutions that are out there today that really just aren't cutting it as they need to in today's world of supply chain organizations. Just to touch on that briefly. So, I think we've probably, all of us that have been in supply chain for a while, we'd probably have to say there's a fair amount of uniqueness over the last few years since COVID hit. It seems like, unrelated to COVID even, there were numerous disruptions that really showed the weaknesses in some of the supply chain organizations and systems and the processes, and showed a real need for all of us to really step up our game in supply chain so that we could actually bring tighter collaboration among supply chain organization, among sales and marketing organizations, and among financial organizations and the systems that drive each of those, so that supply chains can actually develop and perform at a higher level of agility and a higher level of resiliency and a higher level of efficiency and effectiveness. And that's really why ketteQ was founded, to actually address those. And in essence, when we think about supply chain planning, it's really all about that balancing of demand planning and supply planning to make sure that you've got the right estimate, or as accurate an estimate of what your forecast demand is going to be. And then you're able to then plan the supply for that, to address that forecast, so that you have things where you need them, when you need them, in the right amounts, so that it's not too much, not too little, and so forth. And it sounds like all of you are very familiar with that concept, having been in supply chain. And the idea really is, if you can, the better you're able to balance that supply and demand, the better you can grow the revenues and market share, and handle customer demands and reduce inventory and lower costs, and all of those KPIs that may be measured and balanced appropriately. So with ketteQ, we have 7 different solutions, all microservices that are built on Salesforce and on the front end, and AWS on the back end. So on the front end, and specifically tightly coupled with the manufacturing cloud, which we'll talk more about, is the demand planning and forecasting. With manufacturing cloud, it sounds like all of you are very familiar with that. You have the ability to do account-based forecast and perhaps product forecasting using the data processing engine. With ketteQ, we come in and fill that out with a complete demand planning and forecasting solution, which I'll show you when we get to the demo in a few minutes. And then with that forecast, that you may have multiple lines of forecast, multiple scenarios around that forecast, then we'll actually create an inventory and replenishment plan, starting with setting and establishing the safety stock levels at the various distribution centers, at store locations, at customer locations or supplier locations, wherever that inventory may be stored. ketteQ has algorithms that will set those safety stock levels at optimum levels, so that you can meet those customer service levels in the best way possible that you want to meet. And then create an order plan, knowing the lead times and the economic order quantities, that you can then send back into an ERP system to optimize the placement of orders, and again, keep your supply and demand in balance at all times. And then on the production and capacity planning side, ketteQ has the capability then to do your material requirements planning, identify and understand not only what your available to promise levels are, but what are your capabilities to promise, given the available capacity or the upcoming availability of your production facilities. And then service parts planning is really just a combination of demand planning and the inventory and replenishment planning, with a specific focus on some of the nuances associated with service parts planning. And then for the visibility, command, and control, we have a supply chain control tower and a specific configuration of that that's going to optimize the fulfillment and allocation management, and then the service parts delivery and delivery management. So all of these with the front end built on Salesforce and a back end on AWS. And again, scenario capabilities, the scenario management capabilities is one of the key elements of our solution that helps companies work through those optimization scenarios and bring forward a production plan that's going to be most effective. Now, with the manufacturing cloud, as I mentioned before, manufacturing cloud has the ability to do account-based forecasting, so that you could take your pipelines and you could take your sales plans, your sales agreements, and all the and create the forecast, distribute it out not only when those opportunities are going to close, but when you would expect to have to deliver those products. And then ketteQ uses time series analysis from a demand history. We may use causal factors and macro trends and tie in and bring in promotional activities, so that we can actually bring in multiple lines of forecast in addition to the Salesforce manufacturing cloud forecast, and algorithmically blend those various forecasts to give you a comprehensive and complete demand plan. And I'll show you a little bit of that when we get into the demo. And then with that demand plan, you're also able to facilitate the SIOP processes, which are largely, in most companies that I've seen, they're largely manual processes, which consist of the supply organization and the sales organization coming together, maybe with the finance organization, and coming to an agreement on how to blend those signals on the forecast, so that supply organization and the operations can then go and set their supply plan, so that they can best meet what the consensus demand plan is actually winds up being. ketteQ provides a workbench that can actually facilitate those meetings, those manual processes, and then automate it to the extent it's possible with the set of tools and algorithms that we have running behind the scenes.
So, Sai, do you mind if I interrupt you?
No, please do.
So here's the genius of this, and I have misspent so many months of my own life in the S&OP process as the arbiter between supply chain and sales. And so you go into this room, depending upon whether it's quarterly, weekly, monthly, weekly, and towards the end of the year, it's more frequently, because we got to make the numbers, right? So I can tell you at Club Car, they're meeting daily right now, right? And they're trying to make the numbers, and everyone shows up with their own version of the truth. You know, so-and-so has got their Excel spreadsheet. So-and-so has got their Excel spreadsheet. And if you have a 2-hour meeting, an hour and 30 minutes is about whose data. You know, what the value here is that you're not arguing about the data. You may be arguing about what's the right scenario to play out, but the data is sitting on Salesforce. So your account planning and your demand, and so everything having to do with demand, right? And everything that you have to do with supply is all sitting on the same platform. So you're not spending the time talking about whose data is better. You may have a very vociferous conversation about whose point of view is best, right? But you don't talk about, okay, where did you get your data from, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really isn't true of other platforms. And yes, I am selling, but I know what I'm talking about, because I've had to live through those years. So didn't want to take you off your pace, Si, but That's why these things matter.
No, I appreciate that, Frank. Great comments, and I really appreciate the fact that you pointed those out. And again, that is the beauty of the ketteQ platform combined and being on the Salesforce Manufacturing Cloud, is you can get in there and run those scenarios on the fly, on demand, in the meetings, and you can say, what happens if this opportunity I've got that is projected to sell 1,000 units in October, what happens if it actually slips to December or is increased or is improved to August? Then immediately you can change those. And with the scenario capabilities, it's not going to lock that in until the entire room agrees that this is the plan we're going to walk out of here with. And so you can actually do those kinds of scenario management on the fly with the ketteQ platform to get that right balance. So the another aspect then, we have a Polymatic heuristic solver with all of this data in one platform, the supply data, the demand data, the forecasting data. A beauty of having all of that in place in one platform as well becomes the ability to analyze that data automatically. And we have a Polymatic heuristic solver, which can actually run automatically thousands of scenarios behind the scenes, changing the parameters based on the competing KPIs that you may have to actually deliver the best plan for on-time delivery, for inventory carry and availability, for maximizing the capacity utilization, minimizing your shipping cost and inventory capital. Those are all competing KPIs that, again, could have an infinite number of scenarios in terms of how to optimize the balance between each of these KPIs. So this solver will actually take the input, such as material sourcing options and the production capacity, the demand prioritization with the orders, the forecast, the safety stock and inventory, and it's gonna balance all of those things through this solver to come back with a scenario that is going to best be able to meet the corporate KPIs that are most important for that particular given time horizon. And just to talk a little bit about another value of being on the Salesforce platform, Frank mentioned the family of ISVs that focus on delivering solutions to manufacturers. And these are a number of companies. Some of you may have joined us up at the Chicago Summit, the Manufacturing Summit with Salesforce in Chicago. But you've got a complete suite of solutions that are all very complementary on the Salesforce cloud that can actually deliver total value to organizations through their manufacturing and operations areas. So these are some of our partners. There are more, but these are kind of the main ones that we've interfaced with and interacted with. In fact, Frank, with his opening comments, Frank's kind of the godfather of this group. He brought us all together and basically had us realize that our ability to go out and message the value of our solutions collectively is extremely powerful, that I don't think there's any other platform that could actually give that kind of a value proposition that we have here on Salesforce with that. So
and Cy doesn't pay me for this, I promise you, but I have kicked the tires on every single one of these and a few others as well from my former vantage point. And when I kick the tires, it hurts. When they're doing their reviews, I often take. I don't let them do the trials themselves or the demos. I actually say, no, I want you to go right here, or let me do the clicking and I will go where I need to go, because I know what I want to be able to see and how I want to be able to see it. And all of these folks, some of them I know intimately because I was directly involved with them, but I do know them inside and out. And they are fantastic spot solutions in of themselves. But then when you say, okay, well, on top of that, they're on the Salesforce platform, I don't really know what could be better, because you're getting point solutions that are solving the very specific types of problems that manufacturers want. But then you're in all of you have the ability to be able to share that data without integrations. right? So why wouldn't you want that on the Salesforce platform so you don't have to do the integrations? You're sure of the data being shared across the entire platform, and it's just additive. So I feel like this family really works extremely well together, and our pitches to companies that are relooking at their entire infrastructure, we're suggesting you just stay on the platform from beginning to end, whether it's your ERP, it's your PLM, et cetera, and with this constellation of folks, you're answering most of the problems that manufacturers have, with the exception of your shop floor.
Thanks for that, Frank. Again, okay, so just to summarize on the solutions, and then I'm going to attempt to do the demo, but you guys have to remember, I don't have a license to drive. I've had very little practice because I wasn't expecting. Vasu keeps getting kicked off for some reason, but he's finally given up, I think he said. So I'll try to do this demo. But, you know, the significant competitive advantages that ketteQ brings to the table, again, with our partners with Salesforce, would be the groundbreaking solver, ability to run thousands of simulations, whereas legacy systems are only able to run perhaps one scenario at a time, and a user might run 5 or 6 and try to optimize between 5 or 6 scenarios, whereas we're optimizing between thousands of scenarios, which is going to give a much better solve to give that right balance of the KPIs. Our ability to collaborate with sales and other functions within the organization, again, bringing together the marketing team so that you can look at what impact those marketing efforts or activities may have on creating a better forecast, and the financial organization, which is also going to have certain variables that might contribute to the supply side of the plan or the demand side, and then a wider range of supply chain solutions being on the platform with Salesforce. Then finally, very fast and scalable deployment. As most of you know, when you're implementing things on a Salesforce platform, you can do that much quicker than you might be doing if you're on some of these other legacy types of platforms. So those are a few of the significant advantages. And then if anybody has any questions, I'm going to stop sharing just for a second and bring up this demo, but we can chat for a minute and see if any of you have any questions before I go to the demo side.
So one of the questions that I had, you were talking about the ability to model different scenarios. Is that ability to model, is it constrained to the demand side, or can you model supply side scenarios too? For example, variability picks up in this particular delivery cycle or something like that.
Great question. You can model supply side scenarios. You can model scenarios that might have to do with setting a different fill rate for certain SKUs or certain customers or products.
No, that's powerful.
And then you can look at the impact that may have on your safety stock levels.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and service levels. Yep.
Yep. You can also model scenarios that might look at what happens if I add capacity. Maybe by adding a weekend shift or nightly shift, or modify capacity that is not currently available. Is that going to enable you to meet the demand forecast that you may have? So virtually any number of different variables can be changed and set so that you can model a scenario to see what the impact is going to be on the ability to deliver on the right promise dates, and the ability to deliver on time, and the ability to actually, again, balance that supply and demand.
Yeah, the impact on all those competing KPIs that you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? All right. Let me. I'm just going to show you a couple of things on the app itself, and let me also caveat that. If any of you want to have a call and go into a real demo with somebody who knows what they're doing at some point, we would love to talk further. So happy to talk to anyone who may want to dive a little deeper into the product. But let me first go into a few of the different capabilities that ketteQ is actually bringing to the table. So, for example, we have this opportunity, the Acme products opportunity, that's in the Salesforce, that may be in the manufacturing cloud, and you're actually then able to see, what the details of that opportunity might be in terms of the product that they're interested in, or a set of products. In this case, we've got one product that they're interested in, a backhoe attachment. They want 50 of those at a sales price of $500 each. And I am going to have to go to my cheat sheet back and forth, so you guys bear with me, since I wasn't thinking I would need to do this, but I'm going to swing over here and actually show how ketteQ and manufacturing cloud can actually work hand in hand. So with the ketteQ demo, and actually it's not the one I wanted. So this is where we actually picked the Acme products. And if I go into the ketteQ demo to actually see what we've got, here's the demand planning screen. And hopefully, I don't know if these two are tied. I think I've got to go to a demo. So this is a demand planning screen, which, as you can see, it gives us a number of lines of demand. And this is going to be driven based both on historical time series analysis as well as on opportunities. It might also include sales orders. It might also include other types of signals that can give you a better demand plan for that. And it could be actually set up. This is a specific scenario, and you could have an infinite number of scenarios to actually look at, and that may have different settings for different SKUs or products. So, for example, I may want scenarios that are looking at one specific item. I may want scenarios that are looking at one specific customer. I may want scenarios that are looking at a specific opportunity. And then I may also want to look at a particular site, and that could be a site, one single location, or a region, which is a collection of locations. So you've got tremendous flexibility to view a forecast and set your demand plan based on any number of combinations of these. You may want to do it based on a planner or a buyer group or a particular segment, which means it's a particular clustering of products. And then you may have, you can actually set these, everything's hierarchical driven. So you've got the ability to define the item families into different groups. You've got the ability to define different sites. You might also do it by reporting structures, any number of different ways that you can set this hierarchy. And then with the capability to do this, you can also then go in and look at, say, the forecast dashboard, and it's going to actually give you a graphical view of that. And then you can also see for each one of your forecast types, you can look at the historical performance. So whether that be the forecast line coming from manufacturing cloud, or whether it be the forecast line coming from the time series analysis, it's going to show you and let you compare the accuracy of each of those different forecasts. And what ketteQ also has then is a best fit engine, which behind the scenes, I mentioned this is kind of a workbench that lets you go in and do the what if analysis and scenario, but behind the scenes, ketteQ is going to run a best fit engine, which looks at any of about 20 different time series models. It's going to look at your manufacturing cloud forecast, your account-based forecast. It might look at a macroeconomic forecast or a financial forecast. And it's going to run a best fit engine that's actually going to tell you how to blend those forecasts most effectively to give you the best forecast for each and every SKU across your entire supply chain ecosystem. Let me pause just for a second and see if you have any questions on what I've said so far.
I have a quick question. I have to hop off in 3 minutes for a different meeting though, but does it run the actual forecasting on Salesforce using Apex, or does it offload that to something like Heroku or like Heroku Functions?
So
that's
on
a
the
lot
back,
of computing.
Yeah, it is a lot of computing. We're actually running on the back end. We're running on AWS. So for companies that are also tied into AWS, we can also leverage the AWS forecasting models as well as our own models. So you get tremendous flexibility to give a number of different types of forecasts to actually bring back for a production plan.
Okay, so does it, but like who owns, I guess, the data, because if it's in your Salesforce org, is it given, like, do we have our own part of AWS that we're running in, or is it, it's like a shared where it's, you guys are controlling the data and the call outs through your code go to you guys' AWS?
Right, so we can either load it on your instance of AWS or we can run it in ours.
Okay.
We're going to tie in and get the data from an ERP system, whatever ERP system that might be. We're going to get your demand history, and we've got a set of APIs that can connect to most any of the usual ERP systems, whether it's SAP or Oracle or NetSuite or
on platform.
What's that?
Rootstock, like on platform, you guys can connect to them?
Rootstock on platform, yes. So
yeah.
There's no integration necessary if you're using Rootstock, because we're automatically kind of integrated with them since we're both on the platform.
Sweet. That was it.
Hey, okay. Andrew, good to see you, as always. I just want to add a practical spin on what we're seeing here. My point from earlier was, it's usually the battle of the spreadsheets, and someone spends half an hour doing theirs, and then there's a different view and whatever. The value of this is you can spend your time on this screen, and instead you look at the various scenarios of what if, what if we discount the fact that on the demand planning side, we know that this particular territory, or we know that this particular distributor or this particular dealer always fudges their numbers, right? Let's take that down. And so you can play out all these different scenarios right here, and you're not waiting. You don't have people saying, okay, well, I'll come back to you next week. You can actually play them out right here, real time. And that takes that 2-hour meeting that I was taking it down, and you're not spending an hour and a half debating about the data itself, but you are saying, hey, Frank likes to fudge his numbers. Let's go take this down and see what that does to us, right? That's where the crux of this really matters. And you can, which people do, you're not going to get rid of the debate, but you're now debating upon, okay, how is this going to directly affect us and this data element, right? And you're going to be able to see, based upon history, has that prediction been correct or wrong? So you got that as well, and you can play all that out, and it's all about the debate. It's not about the data.
Great point, Frank. Thank you for those comments. So, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the ability then to see all the different types of forecasts. So there may be a sales forecast from the manufacturing cloud. You may have your statistical forecast, and you've got the ability to go in and make adjustments to any of these forecasts, save it under a scenario, and look at the impact that that's going to have on your safety stock levels, on your supply capacity, and your available to promise. So you can make those adjustments. You can audit the history of those adjustments. And then when you find that consensus plan that you want to move to production, you can just promote it to a production. And then that's what everybody will walk out of the room with, saying, okay, this is our plan that we've got for the month or for the week, or however you want to do it. And you could see those plans on any different time horizon. You can see them by day if you want to. You could see it by week. You can see it by month or quarter. You can actually change and look at that by the quantity of products or the dollar amounts. And it could be dollar amounts in revenue, or it could be dollar amounts in cost of goods sold. So again, a lot of the different capabilities of flexibility that you have with this workbench here to actually do that planning right on the spot, on the fly, to get that consensus more quickly and more effectively. Any thoughts or comments or questions so far? So as I mentioned, and I won't go into all of these, but you can also see, you know, the forecast that's driven from sales orders, just from the individual opportunities. You've got the ability to see all of that and do drill downs into what those opportunities might be. And as Frank mentioned, you know, what happens if you want to change the probability on one opportunity because you've got, you know, somebody who's either a sandbagger or an optimistic thinker in terms of what probability and or close date they're putting on those things. So you can change those on the fly to get that consensus much more quickly. Now, once you have the forecast that everyone is comfortable with, then you can actually go to the replenishment planning. The replenishment planning is going to give you at a glance in the summary view. It's going to tell you the if everything's in balance or not. So, for example, you can see you've got these would be your scheduled receipts. This is your planned receipts, which means you haven't actually ordered them yet. But if they are ordered according to plan, that's when they'll be arriving. And then you've got your net requirements, so you can see if you're actually going to be able to meet your demand, which here you can see that your on hand is actually above your net requirements. Here it's below. Here it's below. And you can actually look at whether or not you've got the optimum balance between your supply and demand. And then it's going to give you a table view of this graph down here below. So you can see what makes up those net requirements. Some might be the open orders, some might be the total forecast, some might be based on a dependent forecast. So you're able to, again, get your replenishment plan in a view here. Now you can look at all of the sales orders that you have pending, and you can see any number of different attributes associated with those sales orders, such as what are the promise dates, when is the due date, who are the carrier for those orders, what was the request date, request start date, and end date. So you've got the ability, again, to continue looking and drilling and make sure everything is in complete alignment. And again, you can look at all the details for your receipts as well as your delivery. Sorry, I've got my coworker here is not happy with something right now, so maybe you got something out of balance. But any thoughts or questions so far? All right. Another capability that ketteQ brings to the mix is then the alert engine. So you've got the ability to configure any number of alerts. So, for example, if demand is outstripping the forecast, as soon as that starts to happen, an alert can be sent via email and or just loaded on a dashboard to the appropriate stakeholders to actually say, hey, we've just got a spike in demand that's going to change our forecast, which means we probably need to expedite some of our orders, existing orders or planned orders. You may want alerts that are going to be based on shipments that are late. You can send notifications for proactive confirmation that supply orders are actually going to be shipped on time for critical orders, so that you make sure you're not going to miss those customer deliveries that are critical to the business. So a lot of the capabilities to configure alerts and then deliver those in a control tower dashboard or other types of dashboards as well. I think I've got access to the control tower, but it might require a different login. So I have to see if I'm actually in there. So our control tower, supply chain control tower, is actually built on Tableau. Let me see if I can get access to this. Probably don't have. I think I don't have access to this, but I'll have to show you a control tower if we want to schedule a separate demo. But the control tower basically gives you dashboard visibility into any number of KPIs, and it may be, you know, a high level KPI dashboard. It might be just having to do with your S&OP, forecasting dashboard, inventory, how many days of supply do you have on hand, what your fill rates are for particular customers. So you could configure these dashboards for most of the they're pre-configured for most of the standard KPIs, supply chain KPIs, and then they can also be tailored or customized and configured to your specific needs. So I think I kind of muddled through this. I've shown you a fraction probably of what our capabilities are here, but let me pause sharing, and then maybe we can use the rest of the time for questions and discussions.
Perfect. Thanks, Si. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in now.
And Phil, you know our product a little bit. You've had some exposure. You probably are thinking of the things I may have left out, so you could fill in.
Well, I was just going to first start by saying what a tremendous job of trying to pack an incredible, like a truckload of information into an hour. It's like impossible. It's like describing time. How do you really describe a tool as powerful as what ketteQ is, and all the from all the different angles? It's impossible in an hour. But one of the things that I think is really important for the manufacturing group to get a hold of is, in my experience, one of the most difficult things in an S&OP process is to, number one, get the assumptions documented and get consensus on what those assumptions are, and be able to bring those then into the S&OP process wherever it takes place. And Manufacturing Cloud takes care of that side of things. So with the sales agreements and the ability to inline edit account-based forecast, that's how we take demand planning to the Salesforce team in their workspace. So we're not asking them to leave and go some foreign place. Manufacturing Cloud brings that planning process to their doorstep so that they can participate easily and consistently. And that's one of the key things about Manufacturing Cloud. Then we pass that over to ketteQ that can blend that baseline assumption with all of the science of supply chain planning and all of the different potential scenarios. And you can bring in product plans from the planning group that in that aspect. It's just a tremendous professional level demand planning tool, and it sits on the Salesforce platform, and it's backed up by Amazon horsepower. So it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
And I'm going to comment on two fronts. One, my teams have implemented other solutions in this particular space, and they've tried to build this solution in Tableau. So there are two routes to go, and my teams have done each of them depending upon which organization I would in. And in both situations, I would say, why bother?
Yeah.
What's the point? If you go to the Tableau side, the amount of effort that it takes to actually make all of that work and to create what ketteQ has already done. Had I known that ketteQ even existed back then, I wouldn't have gone through the effort. You have to have both the IT knowledge about how to pull that data down, normalize it, etc. But then you also have to have the supply chain knowledge to actually present it in the way that ketteQ has. Now, I happen to have that, but why would you want to do that and involve a cast of thousands when they've already done it? On the buy it, I think what I have seen of other solutions that are out there and even exist today is that they're very complex, they're hard to maintain, and so it's a very, very heavy lift to get actually anything out of the system. And you don't want it to be a science project, right? You want to be able to get some decent answers in the shortest time possible. And that's another reason why ketteQ makes sense.
Thank you, Frank. So I put my email in the chat there in case anybody wants to shoot me an email. Like I said, happy to set up a time with you to do a proper demo with folks that know how to drive this thing, but more effectively than I do. But anyway, sorry I had to ad lib a little bit with Vasu's technical difficulties. But very much appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat with you guys. And it's great to meet you. And thanks for allowing me to join you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cy. And thank you, Frank, as well, for hopping on and providing some more context and color commentary around all of this. We will definitely be syncing up with you to see how we can tee up more of these in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Happy holidays, guys.
Happy
Yes,
holidays.
same to you. Thanks. Bye.